Okay, thank you so much for joining me for a chat today. Can you start off by telling us your name and your role in the film The Adventures of Sleepy the Magical Bear, please?
Hi there, my name is Lek, and I am the composer for Sleepy the Magic Bear.
Wow. Okay, Lek, that is a massive title, the composer. Can you talk us through that and just talk us what exactly you composed, how you composed?
Yes.
It's a big question.
It's a very big question, yeah. And I should point out I am the main composer. There are a couple of other
Yeah.
people who have also added some interesting content, which is out of my remit. So there's some fantastic songs in there, which I haven't done. So I'm responsible for what is called the underscore, which is the orchestral sounds underneath the motion pictures. So the dialogue always comes first with the action on screen, and I'm there to put a bed to the scenes to kind of create the flavor of the scene. So I have got a lot of creative input there, because I can make a scene sort of changed by the sort of sounds of the music I'm using, whether they're big and epic, or if they're sad or happy or whatever. So I've got a lot of interesting creative input there. And yeah, so and it's mostly all orchestral. There's not a great deal of standard band stuff in there. So yes, it's kind of big orchestral, kind of fairly epic music a lot of the time. David likes his kind of epic stuff.
And can I just say that, like, I've heard I've had the pleasure of hearing some of it, and it sounds amazing. And for me, music, like, I can happily watch a film, but if there isn't any music in it, then I wouldn't enjoy it as much. Like, sometimes I'm listening to the music more than watching a film, because I think music is just what makes a film. Exactly what you said. It can heighten that emotion, and it just creates something so special. I'm so passionate about it. I think you're so talented. So just talk us through, how did you see any of the footage? Or are you just composing by reading the book of David Tony?
No, I always get some footage, but it's never the end footage. So David will send me a couple of bits, which he'll say have not been finished, they haven't been colorized, they haven't even been edited together, and a lot of the background scenes aren't even in there. And he just gives me a brief description of what he thinks he wants to hear from that. And I then quite literally go away and just look at what is essentially a fairly broken down piece of film, and study it, and just think, okay, if I was in that scene, if I was in that scenario, if I was that character, how would I feel about it? What would I be wanting to achieve from this? And I just start from there. I start from a point, and if it looks like a fairly moody scene, then I'll start with some sort of deep instruments, some basses, contrabasses, and if it's a sort of a light, bright, happy song, then or scene, then I'll start off with some high strings or flutes, or just something. I'll just grab a point and just start with something, anything, just to kind of get the feeling going. But yes, David will always give me some sort of footage. I think he did once say to me, just write some music. And that worked out okay, but I find it's better for me if I can see just something to give me a little bit of a starting point.
100%. Is there do you have any, like, any compositions in the film where it completely is different from the end, from where you started at the beginning?
Yes, there's a couple of pieces which deliberately go into a really, really difficult section. There's a beach scene where some evil force comes in and attacks the actors in the scene, the characters. And so it starts off as a really lovely little sort of almost like a sea shanty, and then there's this appalling, great kind of sort of supernatural noise thing that actually rips the whole part, and actually becomes quite difficult to listen to, which is kind of the point. And then at the end, I think Sleepy saves the day, and we return to the nice sort of sea shanty music. So it can go from one to another quite quickly. Generally speaking, because of the length of the scenes, the tonal theme does tend to stay within a certain parameter. So it might lift, it might crescendo, but it'll stay tonally the same.
I love that though, like how you put that, where you use instruments to suit that kind of feel for that scene, like what you said about the strings or the low bass, depending on the mood of the piece. Did you tend to compose for a character, or was it more soundtrack music?
it's not a specific character, but it's the character of the character. So it's kind of it's a struggle, because there are films where you do deliberately score for a particular character and they have a sound, they even use a particular instrument.
Yeah.
And I haven't done that so much, but what I've done is created sort of themes for certain types. So if it's an action theme and Sleepy's on the good side of it, then there'll be a certain type of orchestration for that. If it's a similar action scene, but he's not in the scene itself, then I'll use a completely different sort of orchestration. But there is still a kind of binding sense of the elements of the scene.
Okay, amazing. And do you use all your software to kind of play those instruments in, or do you actually play some instruments that then are recorded in?
Mostly it's the software instruments. If I look at this,
I love where you are. Is that where everything was recorded, or?
It's the same machinery. I've moved studio a couple of times in the last few years, but here I've got a whole bank of different sampled instruments, mostly from the Spitfire range of orchestral instruments, and I'll pick and choose from the orchestras. But a lot of the instruments aren't standard instruments. They're instruments that have been sampled through other things. So you may find a whole string section that's been put through a guitar amplifier and then cranked up the gain to make it sound really, really rough. And those sorts of things are great fun playing with. So there's quite a lot of sound design. But on the whole, it's taken from the samples now. I've got guitars here and I've got drums here. And I've got all keyboards down here, which I can overlay stuff if I need particular things to kind of go on top, which I simply don't want to do with the sample stuff. Then I'll pick up an instrument. Or in the case of one of the scenes, I actually got hold of a singer, and we communicated over the internet. And I sent her just a vague brief. I wrote a whole load of words in Latin and sent them off to her and just said, sing these words as best you can using this vague tune. I kind of hummed the tune, and she sent it back and put about 5 harmonies on it, and it was just extraordinary. So sometimes it's kind of nice just to kind of branch out and actually use completely different people if you can.
Is that the singing rock lick?
Yes, it was singing rock, and also there's a chase scene just afterwards where Sleepy's in the car and he's flying over all these mountains. And he's and he finally lands. He's on his way to the castle somewhere, and so she's got this kind of almost this Flight of the Valkyries sort of tone to her, and she's bellowing out all this incredible stuff. And that was brilliant.
Stunning. I've had the privilege of looking at just that scene and hearing, and the music and her vocals and the way you compose that together. It sounds incredible. It really does. Like, I could just listen to that by itself all day. It's really beautiful. It's great, and with the scenery and everything, it's amazing.
It works really well.
Yeah, it works really well. I loved it. Do you have like a favorite scene that you composed? Like, is it the singing rock one, or anything else?
I really like this one that I've got up on the screen now, which I call the science scene, and it's when Jenny is in the school and she's in a science class, and it was one of the really early pieces that I wrote, and the film splits into sort of 2 main parts. There's a sort of a lead into all the characters and all of their issues and problems that they have, and then the second sort of half of the film is the big dramatic kind of leading to the end of the film, and it all becomes a lot more epic and stuff. So this particular scene is before it got all epic, and so I was able to write some really quite simple but fun music, and I really, really like this particular piece, which is the science scene.
Amazing.
It just had a lot of space in it, and the thing with writing massive epic music is that there tends not to be a huge amount of space, because you're just throwing a lot of stuff at it the whole time. This piece was lovely because it was played with bassoons and double basses, and it just was quirky and fun and interesting and magical. It had the first sense of when we first meet the magic in the film, and that was nice.
Did you use any percussion instruments to create that magic? Did you find that helpful, or was it?
I used percussion, but not drums. So I was using kind of
amazing.
like guitars and harps and some cymbal sounds. So there wasn't any kind of great crashing of any sorts. It was more this kind of sizzling kind of sound that was more appropriate, I think, for that number, because it was in a science class and she was making this experiment and stuff. And so I was trying to kind of recreate the sound of the experiment, sort of erupting, and all this snow starts falling down. And it was quite a lovely scene. I do like it.
Sounds amazing. I can just imagine your like worksheet on your software, it must have like 20 instruments on the
Oh,
side.
it's got hundreds. I mean, you can see them
Oh,
just in.
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, there's a whole ton of stuff going on there. It can get quite difficult, and you do tend to start going down these rabbit holes. We just add on more and more and more and more and more because it sounds fantastic, and then you listen to it in context, and you just think, no, there's far too much going on here. You know, it's not actually. It is actually about the film, and you have to pull back a lot. And if there's dialogue in there, you have to pull out a lot of the music so that the dialogue can be heard. So once you write the whole thing, you think, oh, that sounds amazing. You then have to listen to it over and over again with the dialogue in there and think, hang on a minute, there's just too much music and this is going to override what is actually going on. Like I said, it's always about the film first. The film is first, the dialogue, the action scenes. And really, I'm just there to underscore it. And it's quite difficult to not get too excited about the whole thing and just kind of write this enormous, great big kind of soundscape, which is where I tend to start. Yeah.
So do you think was that one of the challenges that you maybe faced during this time, but also when you're composing the music for the film, but also was did you face any kind of challenges working in the pandemic? Or you used to working at home, so it's kind of like...
Yeah, I'm kind of used to working at home. So to me, it really didn't provide any difficulties at all, other than the fact that I wasn't able to go and visit people to get the musical parts. Like I said, I had to do the whole singing thing on the internet. It would have been nice to have actually visited Kathleen and actually gone there and met her and recorded with her. Apart from that, no, I was in the studio the whole time, and it can be quite a little lonesome time anyway, because you do find yourself just in a advisor for a long, long time, and it's kind of necessary to actually get out and have breaks. So the pandemic, to me, and all the lockdown, didn't really affect the musicality of the work. It was slightly strange just being in that system, and whenever you did go out, realizing that the rest of the world around you had really had ground to a halt. But no, it didn't affect music, which was nice.
And have you composed music for film before, like?
I have, yes. This is my third feature film. Wow. So I've done before this, and I've done some shorts as well, and some university projects, that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And has this one been different? Like, has Sleepy been different to your past?
Absolutely, totally different. All of the other films have been very different. One of them was a very light sort of jazz motif, a bit like from the film Birdie, where you just sort of like, some drums, double bass, and a sax and that kind of stuff. And that was absolutely lovely doing that. And the others were, with Sleepy, it's kind of wall-to-wall music. When the scene starts, the music starts. When the scene stops, the music stops. The other films have tended to be a lot less, and just when certain things have happened, you put a little bit of sort of almost sound design music in there just to sort of lead you from one scene to another, but it's not this great sort of wall of music, which is what Sleepy is. Sleepy is more, to me, a kind of soundtrack with a film. It's like a musical film rather than a feature which will just have an underscore of music in it. So yeah,
it's always such a pleasure talking to you, and I always learn so much from you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
Okay.
you, Lex.